Some things you sense before you even see them. The shift in the air, the silence that feels too thick, the way your skin prickles as if warning you of something unseen. That night, I didn't hear him. I didn't see him, but I felt him. And I knew, with a certainty that sent a cold chill down my spine, that it wasn't my husband. The day had been long. Work had drained me, my mind fogged from back-to-back meetings, the weight of unfinished tasks pressing against my skull. Mark had left before sunrise, muttering something about an important conference call. We barely spoke anymore. The warmth that once filled our marriage had dulled into a distant echo, replaced by quiet indifference. I wasn't sure when it had happened, when we had stopped reaching for each other, when the love had become routine, transactional. I only knew that by the time I walked through the front door that evening, the house felt as empty as I did. I set my bag down on the kitchen counter, kicking off my heels with a sigh. The silence wrapped around me, thick and unshakable. I glanced at my phone. No messages. Not from Mark, not from anyone. Just a quiet reminder that I was alone. I poured myself a glass of wine, letting the cold liquid settle my nerves. Outside, the wind rattled against the windows, the faint hum of passing cars the only sign of life beyond the walls of my home. I should have felt safe here. I should have felt at ease. But something was wrong. I just didn't know what yet. It started subtly. A feeling. The air felt different, charged, as if something unseen lingered just beyond my field of vision. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just exhaustion, that I was letting my imagination get the best of me. Then I heard it. A sound. Faint, almost imperceptible. A creak. I froze, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. The house was still. Too still. I strained my ears, waiting for another sound, some confirmation that it was nothing, just the house settling, the wind outside shifting against the walls. But then it happened again. A presence. A shift in the air. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My breathing slowed, my heartbeat drumming against my ribs. My mind raced through possibilities. Was Mark home early? No, I would have heard his car, his keys jingling as he unlocked the door. I was alone. Wasn't I? I turned my head slightly, my eyes scanning the dimly lit hallway. And that's when I saw it. A shadow. Motionless. Watching. A cold wave of dread crashed over me. My grip on the wine glass tightened. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to move, to run, but my legs refused to obey. I was frozen, trapped in the grip of some unseen force, as if acknowledging its presence would somehow make it more real. Then, a voice low, steady broke the silence. You shouldn't be here alone. My blood ran cold. The voice was deep, unfamiliar, filled with something that made my stomach turn. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't anyone I knew. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. Who are you? The shadow shifted, stepping forward into the dim light. And when I saw his face, my entire world tilted. I knew him, but he wasn't supposed to be here. I took an involuntary step back, my breath hitching in my throat. My grip on the wine glass was so tight that I thought it might shatter in my hand. The man in front of me, his figure still partially obscured by the darkness of the hallway, wasn't just some stranger. He was someone from my past. Someone I had tried to forget. He took another step forward, his face now fully visible in the dim kitchen light. His eyes calm, unbothered, like he belonged here, locked onto mine with unsettling familiarity. It's been a long time, he said, his voice almost amused, as if this were some kind of reunion. As if this weren't completely, horribly wrong. I couldn't speak. My thoughts tangled in a mess of fear and disbelief. My body screamed at me to move, to run, to grab my phone, but I just stood there, my breath caught in my throat. You look good, he continued, his tone casual, almost warm. Better than I expected. My stomach twisted. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be real. What? My voice finally came, weak and trembling. What are you doing here? His expression didn't change. If anything, his smirk deepened. That's a complicated question. Try answering it anyway. He tilted his head slightly, considering me. All right. I wanted to see you. It's been, what, 10 years? You didn't think we'd run into each other again. My pulse pounded so loudly in my ears that I could barely hear my own voice. You weren't supposed to come back. His smirk faltered for the briefest second. And yet, here I am. Something about the way he said it sent another shiver through me. He wasn't here by accident. This was intentional. I took a step toward the counter, my mind already racing for an escape plan. You need to leave. He exhaled, almost like he was disappointed. I was hoping you'd be happy to see me. We have unfinished business. I shook my head. We have nothing. His eyes darkened. That's where you're wrong. I heard it before I saw it, his movement, fast and fluid. I barely had time to react before he reached out, his fingers grazing my wrist. Not a grip, not yet, but enough for my entire body to tense. Don't touch me, I snapped, yanking my arm away. For the first time, his expression shifted. His jaw clenched slightly, his smirk gone. Relax, he murmured. I just want to talk. I took another step back. Get out. Now. He didn't move. He just stood there, watching me, measuring me. Then, with a slow, almost deliberate exhale, he turned toward the door. All right, he said. I'll go. But before he stepped outside, he glanced back at me, his expression unreadable. This was just a courtesy visit. Next time, I won't be so polite. The door closed behind him, and I finally let out the breath I didn't realize I had been holding. My legs felt weak, my hands trembling. Whoever he was now, he wasn't the man I remembered. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this wasn't over. The moment the door shut behind him, I collapsed against the counter, my body trembling from the rush of adrenaline. My mind raced, every nerve screaming at me that something was terribly, terribly wrong. He had found me. After all these years, he had walked back into my life as if the past had never happened, as if he could step into my home, speak my name, and unravel the fragile world I had built. I grabbed my phone with shaking fingers, barely able to type as I scrolled through my contacts. My first instinct was to call Mark, but then I hesitated. Would he believe me? Would he even care? Things between us had been distant for so long that I wasn't sure where his concern ended and his indifference began. I swallowed hard, my breath coming in shallow gasps. If I told him, if I let him into this nightmare, would he help me? Or would I just be handing him another reason to pull away? No, I couldn't risk it. Not yet. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. I set the phone down, pressing my palms against the cool marble countertop, trying to steady myself. Think. The way he had spoken, the way he had stood there so casually, it was as if he was testing me, gauging my reaction. This wasn't a coincidence. He wanted something. And worse, I had a sinking feeling he wasn't done. I barely slept that night. Every creak, every distant hum of the city outside sent my nerves into overdrive. I kept replaying his words over and over in my head. This was just a courtesy visit. What did that mean? That he'd be back? That he expected something from me? The next morning, I went through the motions of normalcy, but my body was on autopilot. I showered, dressed, made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the clock, my fingers curled around the warm ceramic mug, yet feeling nothing. Then, my phone buzzed. I flinched, my heart slamming against my ribs. Slowly, I reached for it, my pulse roaring in my ears as I turned it over. Unknown number. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore it, to pretend none of this was happening. But I knew better. He wouldn't go away just because I wished it so. I inhaled sharply and pressed accept. You're awake. The voice on the other end was smooth, calm, too calm. A lump formed in my throat. What do you want? A soft chuckle, still as direct as ever. I always liked that about you. I gritted my teeth. You have 5 seconds before I hang up. All right. No need to be so dramatic. A pause. Then, meet me for coffee. We have things to discuss. I have nothing to say to you. That's where you're wrong. You just don't know it yet. My grip tightened around the phone. Why are you doing this? His voice dipped lower, softer. Because I can. A chill ran down my spine. No, I whispered, shaking my head. Because you need something. Another pause. Then, smart girl. 10 o'clock. Pierre's Cafe. Don't be late. The line went dead. I exhaled sharply, gripping the phone like a lifeline. He was toying with me, leading me somewhere I didn't want to go, and yet, I had to find out why. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. The scent of fresh coffee hung in the air, mingling with the quiet hum of conversations from the few occupied tables. I spotted him immediately, sitting near the window, one hand wrapped around a coffee cup, the other resting lazily against the table. He looked different than I remembered. Sharper, colder. The years had changed him in ways I couldn't quite place, but his eyes, those stayed the same. Calculating. Dangerous. I sat down across from him, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Talk. He smiled. No pleasantries? No, how have you been? You don't deserve them. His smirk widened. Fair enough. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving mine. I need a favor. A bitter laugh escaped me. A favor? After 10 years of silence, after showing up in my home uninvited? You think I owe you something? Not oh, he corrected. But you're the only one who can help me. I shook my head. You're insane. His expression didn't change. Hear me out. Then decide. I crossed my arms. You have 2 minutes. He exhaled slowly, as if weighing his words. I'm in trouble. That's not my problem. It will be. My chest tightened. Why? His fingers drummed against the table. Because they think you're involved. I froze. What? Who? I don't have time to explain everything right now. But they know about us. Our past. And that's enough for them to start asking questions. My stomach twisted. I don't even know what you're involved in. You don't need to. His jaw tensed. You just need to trust me. I let out a sharp breath. Trust you? Are you serious? His eyes darkened. Do you want to live? The words hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was insane, but something about the way he said it, the weight in his tone, told me that this wasn't a game. This was real. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I needed to be more afraid of, him or the people looking for him. What do you need me to do? I whispered. His expression softened, just slightly. Good choice. I swallowed hard. No, not a choice. A trap. And I had just walked into it.